Chapter 4. Penelope didn't know why she'd agreed to Jacob's request, and she dissected their conversation as she pulled into the driveway of Lincoln and Shanice's farmhouse on Saturday. Shanice had inherited the farmhouse from her grandmother, Jasmine, and the house even had a name, Jasmine's Joy. Evan had missed the entire week at school, declaring he wasn't feeling well enough to attend, and his accommodating teachers had sent online assignments to him. Penelope hovered over his shoulder, offering to help. "What a great idea, Mom," Evan said, as if the teachers won't realize it's your work and not mine. "I didn't say I would do the work." She reached for the homework papers her son had printed. "I've got this covered, okay? Science is my favorite subject." Science had always been her worst subject, so she agreed. She could only trust that he'd completed the assignments. "I'm showing Jacob Williams the town of roses and prospective houses for sale," Penelope began after Lincoln opened the front door and welcomed her and Evan inside the farmhouse. Evan disappeared into the living room and dropped his backpack onto the floor. He clicked on the television set, and Penelope heard a delighted squeal when Shanice's cat and Lincoln's dog jumped on the couch beside him. The couple had no children and frequently discussed adoption. Currently, they devoted their free time to expanding New Beginnings toys and renovating the rambling farmhouse. "I think showing him the town is a wonderful idea," Shanice remarked when Penelope stepped into the kitchen. "He trapped me into this," Penelope replied. "Trapped is when you're stuck inside for days after a snowstorm. Hanging out with Dr. Handsome is exciting." "I'm not his realtor," Penelope said. "Besides, I can't choose the right house for him." Shanice tucked a strand of thick ebony hair behind her ear, then grabbed plates from the glass-fronted cabinet. "For some reason he prefers you. I wonder why." "Short explanation. I'm a native of roses." "Honestly, Penny." Shanice referred to Penelope by her nickname. "Jacob is a dream come true. Rumor has it that he's single and in his early 50s. If he wants to spend time with you, don't fight it." "Because you're married to Lincoln, who clearly loves you," Penelope thought. "You have no fears of denials and infidelity and heartbreak." Shanice plated oversized portions of sweet potato pie and carried the plates to the table. "Jacob Williams moved into town only a short time ago and has already established a free clinic," Shanice said. "He's committed to helping the community and is an exceptional doctor." "He's interested in his patients," Penelope said. "How many doctors make house calls anymore?" Shanice smiled at Lincoln, then beamed at Penelope. "None, and certainly not for a case of strep throat. Any ideas what drew him to visit you?" "He is new in town." "We've established that," Shanice replied. "Okay, he is admired." At her sister-in-law's obvious delight at her statement, Penelope amended, "I like him as a friend." "He's an eligible bachelor." "I see where you're headed, and the answer is I'm not interested. After my nasty divorce, dating is no longer in the cards for me." Penelope forked a piece of pie and smirked at Lincoln. "Are you aware your wife has already married me off to this guy?" "She's a cheerleader for your happiness. We're both thrilled you opened your life to a man. Give him a chance. You're finally excited about dating someone. With the holidays approaching..." "Lincoln, we're not dating. You're envisioning Jacob and I under a mistletoe, kissing, and married by New Year's Day." She peered around the expansive kitchen. "You started to decorate for Christmas. I love the reindeer salt and pepper shakers. And the poinsettias from the garden center are gorgeous, especially the red and pink ones. I noticed them by the fireplace when I walked in." And we celebrate Kwanzaa, too. He looked fondly at his wife, then back at Penelope. Don't you want to spend the holidays with a special someone? You've been alone too long. Maybe. Sometimes. That special someone may be right under your nose. He studied her intently. You blush whenever his name is mentioned. Her warm face gave her away. Jacob is originally from Australia. Ooh, I love an Australian man's accent, Shanice said. Lincoln's eyebrows furrowed. More than mine? You don't have an accent? He drummed his fingers on the table. I have a southern accent. So do I, and that doesn't count because a southern accent isn't exotic. I've heard it my whole life. However, I love you anyway. Shanice leaned over and kissed him on the cheek. He placed his fork on his plate, pulled her closer, and kissed her back. Penelope grinned when Shanice broke the kiss. You two are an inspiration. Their infectious laughter wafted through the kitchen. Lincoln was Penelope's younger brother, square-jawed, considerate, and generous, and he and Shanice had been granted a second chance when he'd returned to Rose's. He'd pursued her, married her, and they planned to raise a family. When Penelope regarded them, a twinge of longing went through her chest. They'd found each other and enjoyed a loving marriage. Meanwhile, her ex had cheated on her with another woman, someone decades younger and much prettier. Jealousy knocked, though not followed by grief. Penelope refused to jump into the courting game again, and she declared her decision to everyone who would listen. In her defense, she tried dating, both online and in person, and both were unsuccessful. Shanice shifted her gaze to Penelope. I can't wait to meet Dr. Williams. He's a pediatrician, so I doubt you'll have the opportunity for a while. Oh, you'll introduce us well before that. Shanice wiggled her eyebrows. Seems as if you two are spending oodles of time getting better acquainted. Penelope leaned back in her chair. We only spent a few hours together because his visit to my house was a house call, the husband and wife chorused in unison. And don't forget the plane. Remember, you told us all about it. Penelope noted the glints in their eyes and laughed. Did the good doctor examine Evan while he was at your house? Shanice asked. Water, anyone? At their nods, she stepped to the refrigerator and grabbed several bottles. No, although Jacob inquired about him, Penelope replied, accepting a bottle from Shanice. We didn't want to bother Evan because he was in his room playing video games. Makes perfect sense, not. Lincoln chuckled. Either way, we're delighted. Your divorce was difficult, and Shay and I, are pleased you're interested in a good man. Any mention of Penelope's ex set off a chain of reactions, and she sternly fought to keep her sadness under control. She sliced her pie portion in half and slid the pie onto Lincoln's plate. My birthday is coming soon, she explained at his quizzical expression. I've been eyeing a lovely dress, though it's quite short and clingy. My figure could use a remodel. Don't shortchange yourself. Shanice placed her hand on Penelope's forearm. You are beautiful. I appreciate you handling the snafu with the shipping problem the other day. Lincoln took a swig of water. You put in a great deal of effort to solve it. I don't say it often enough, but you are vital to our company's success. I hate my job. Penelope's words to Jacob echoed in her mind. However, if she examined her statement, she didn't hate her job. She'd simply grown tired of doing the same tasks day after day, year after year. Initially, she'd assumed the responsibilities of the family business to please her father. She'd worked at the toy shop throughout high school and then slipped right back into the business after college. When had she become indispensable? How could she ever leave when her brother depended on her. Equally important, what would she do instead? She was proficient at organizing, yet not overly adept at shaping her own life. Her inferiority stemmed from her ex's cheating, a major hit to her self-confidence. Old news, old excuses. Look ahead. Refuse to dwell on the past. Evan assured me that he finished his science essay, though you may want to double-check, she said. He brought his backpack, but he won't allow me anywhere near his assignments. He only missed a few days of school. Lincoln steepled his fingers together. He's responsible. She gazed out the window. A rustic barn was framed in the distance, along with a fire pit and the rolling hills of roses beyond. Why won't he let me help him? Because he needs to learn some things by himself. Think how proud he'll feel when he turns in those assignments. He hates school. I wished he loved 7th grade as much as I did. You loved 7th grade? Shanice smirked. I never met anyone who loved 7th grade. Penelope craned her neck toward the living room and observed her son. He seemed so vulnerable sitting on the couch between the dog and the cat, so solitary. Her foolish fear of him failing stemmed from her own difficulties in school, she rationalized. She'd struggled and never been able to achieve the high grades her younger brother attained with ease. Logically, she knew Lincoln was right, and she was grasping for excuses to hold on to her only child. If only time stood still, or at least slowed down. She speculated, had the past year flown by for Evan, as it had for her? I want Evan to be confident in himself, she murmured. You're doing a fine job raising him, Lincoln said. Then why didn't Evan have any friends? Her thoughts tangled. When things weren't right in Evan's world, they weren't right in hers either. She wanted him to enjoy the childhood she never had. Her father was a taskmaster who set impossible standards, a workaholic aiming for success at all costs. Evan shouldn't be held back because of her, a woman who might never recover from humiliation and hurt caused by sorrow and misgivings. He's acting like a preteen, Lincoln said. He's perfectly normal. He's down on himself, she murmured. He has gained weight this year, Shanice broke in, then put a hand to her mouth. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have mentioned anything. It's okay. Penelope blew out a breath. Sometimes I feel helpless. I'm trying to eliminate junk food in the house, although I'm equally guilty. Lately, I've been encouraging him to be more active. He's touchy and snappish if I mention swimming. He's welcome to keep us company any time. We have chickens in the barn, a dog, a cat, and more plants than we can count. He grinned at his wife. Shanice was a professional landscaper. Evan wants a puppy for Christmas, Penelope said. Get him one. He's at the perfect age, and dogs are wonderful companions. I work a lot. It isn't fair to the dog. Dogs love people. I'll give you the time off, Lincoln teased. And Evan gets off many school holidays. It seems like the kids are hardly ever in school anymore. Now, in my day, things were exactly the same. However, it's food for thought, and you're both too kind. Penelope was grateful for their welcoming invitation, though it meant she would be alone if Evan spent nights at his uncle's house. And what about the days before Christmas, when he was scheduled to visit his father? The visitation stipulated every other year, and this was Evan's year to visit. The prospect tied her stomach in a knot. Christmas was such a special season, and she would be missing those precious days with her son. How would she cope when he left for college in a few years? Kids went to college all the time, though the possibility of Evan leaving ripped at her heart. Then she would truly be by herself. From across the table, Lincoln grabbed her hands. Start living your life again. I'm trying. It's difficult. Her brother's advice was sound. Why did she refute him? Perhaps the best path for Evan was to allow him room to grow. She carried her plate to the sink. Thanks for the pie, Shanice. I'd better run. Jacob is picking me up at 2:00. Shanice grinned. You're on a first-name basis with Dr. Handsome. Penelope stood quietly for a moment before she nodded, recognizing the meaningful smiles exchanged between her brother and Shanice. She crossed to the living room and instructed Evan to help his aunt and uncle on the farm because the tasks were endless. He bristled before agreeing, reminding her that Uncle Lincoln had an adorable dog and a cat and chickens, though Evan didn't have any pets. You own a hamster, she reminded. He stroked the dog beside him. The cat had settled on his lap. Christmas is coming, right? And a puppy? Let's get through this semester first. Penelope planted a kiss on top of his hair. Say hi to Dr. Williams, Evan called out. Tell him I'll volunteer next Saturday morning. I will. She stepped to the door. She planned to meet Jacob at her house because he'd insisted on driving. She told Evan she was taking Jacob house hunting, and he hadn't remarked one way or the other. She'd wondered at the time if he'd even heard her. Apparently he had, and didn't have a problem with it. Dr. Williams, Jacob. She was spending the afternoon with Jacob. Her stomach tightened, full of odd flurries she couldn't define.